faithfully conveying value, interpreting great books from around the world.
Hello, this is Sally's Book Club.
Today we're exploring the book Sweet and Deadly, subtitled How Sugar Destroys Us and How We Can Break Free from It. Sugar is ubiquitous in our daily diets. Cakes, bubble tea, ice cream, all beloved modern treats. What sweets do you crave? Have you considered their health impact? Share your thoughts in the comments. Food didn't always contain this much sugar. It infiltrated our lives post-industrial revolution, altering our bodies. Since the early 20th century, heart disease rates soared in America. By the 1950s, it became health's #1 killer. President Eisenhower's heart attack left him unable to govern for 6 weeks. This sparked global research into the epidemic, pinpointing two suspects: sugar and fat. Sugar barons, America's wealthiest industry, feared science would condemn their product.
Profit-driven manufacturers funded biased studies, even publishing fake science claiming sugar was harmless. Key influencer? Ansel Keys, University of Minnesota professor.
Bankrolled by sugar interests, he crafted the infamous 7-country study, pushing the lipid hypothesis, blaming fats. Sugar industry propaganda swayed health authorities to adopt fat avoidance guidelines. Yet from 1965 to 21, despite 25% less fat intake, heart disease, obesity, and diabetes rates climbed. Deeper research exposed Key's academic fraud. His single quote, 7 countries, cherry-picked data from just 7 nations out of 22 studied. Sugar's impact on heart disease is back in the spotlight, with new research data showing its health hazards, until 2015 when the World Health Organization started urging people worldwide to cut sugar intake. And now, in 2016, the U.S. dietary guidelines lifted restrictions on cholesterol and fat energy ratios.
Fat actually served as sugar scapegoat for over half a century.
The author, John Yudkin, was a renowned British physiologist and nutritionist who taught at Queen Elizabeth College, Cambridge, and dedicated his life to studying sugar's links to tooth decay, diabetes, and coronary heart disease. He's a pioneer in sugar research. Yudkin publicly opposed Ansel Keys' lipid hypothesis, proposing the sugar hypothesis instead, and in 1973 published this book's English version, Pure, White, and Deadly, focusing on sugar's dangers and exposing this century-long lie. Compared to fat, sugar is actually the #1 threat to human health. When Yudkin published this book, he faced relentless slander and suppression from the sugar industry. Meetings canceled, academic journals refusing his articles, and even attacks from pro-sugar factions. Scientists used their credibility to criticize the book as science fiction, causing it to go out of print temporarily. Today, Yudkin's views have become the consensus in nutritional science. The book was hailed as the Bible of sugar reduction and republished in Chinese as Sweet and Deadly. The sugar discussed here refers to common edible sugars like white sugar, brown sugar, and rock sugar, mainly composed of sucrose. The author details how sugar ruins our health and how to reduce its negative effects. Next, we'll break down the book's main content into 3 parts. First, let's get to know sweet sugar. Second, how does sugar destroy our health? Third, how can we reasonably control our sugar intake? In part 1, we'll explore sweet sugar, how it entered daily life, and the differences between various sugars. In our daily lives, sugar is incredibly common. You can easily spot it in ingredient lists of ice cream, bread, juice, bubble tea, chocolate candies. It seems we can't live without it. Sugar is sweet. It helps preserve food. When heated, caramelization enhances flavor and appearance. It makes soft drinks smoother, and it helps pectin set in jams. These benefits make people more accepting of sugary foods. Research shows that eating sweets is like an intimate interaction with a lover, stimulating the brain to release dopamine and create feelings of happiness and excitement. Then the brain memorizes this joyful sensation and constantly signals you to consume sugar, making you eat non-stop and get addicted to its sweetness. Our ancestors didn't have much sugar in their diet. So, how did sugar become so common in every household? This brings us to two food revolutions. Before the Neolithic Revolution, ancient humans migrated widely, sourcing food mainly from hunting animals and gathering plants. Back then, people satisfied sweet cravings mainly with fruits, and only when lucky could they gather wild honey as a treat. It wasn't until after the Neolithic Revolution that agriculture allowed humans to cultivate grains and root crops and attempt to domesticate wild animals. Humans began settled life in social groups, further developing civilization, art, and creativity. The Neolithic Revolution greatly increased food supply. Increased intake of grains and vegetables reshaped human diets into a carb-rich, protein and fat-poor structure that persists today. The main carbohydrate form is starch, which breaks down into glucose for energy absorption and use. Fruits and veggies contain some sugar plus nutrients like protein and vitamins, yet people strip away everything else to leave pure sugar. Around 2,500 years ago, extracting and drying sugarcane juice produced raw sugar. Sugarcane cultivation spread globally, but due to inefficient refining, refined sugar was a luxury, priced like caviar, accessible only to royalty and nobility for a long time. 16th century English nobles took pride in rotten teeth. Even Queen Elizabeth I had decayed ones. Ordinary poor people without money could only follow the trend by blackening their teeth. Until the 18th century, accumulated scientific and technological advances sparked the second food revolution. Breakthroughs in biotechnology for crop improvement, agricultural irrigation systems, fertilizers, pesticides, and food preservation dramatically boosted human survival and food storage capabilities. Most people could freely choose diverse foods without seasonal or geographical restrictions. Simultaneously, technological progress profoundly transformed food processing methods. Through industrialization, extraction, and additives, people created novel food forms non-existent in nature. People increasingly chose foods they craved, not merely for sustenance. Consumption of tastier foods like meat and fruit skyrocketed. The clearest example, as processed foods flooded shelves, the industry realized sugar was the ultimate additive. Sugar's sweet temptation made processed foods irresistible. To boost appeal, sugar content in foods kept increasing. Having covered sugar's history, let's explore its production methods and varieties. Dietary sugar is mainly sucrose, 99% extracted from sugarcane or sugar beets, primarily produced in Brazil, India, EU, China, and Thailand. Modern processing has two steps. First, raw sugar extraction. Harvested cane is topped, left, then mechanically cut, crushed, and milled. Freshly pressed cane juice is a pale gray, murky liquid, retaining about 97.5% of the cane's sugar. Next, boiling the juice with lime clarifies it. The clear liquid is evaporated, crystallized, and spun in 1,200 RPM centrifuges to yield brown, raw sugar. Step 2. Refining white sugar. Raw sugar shipped to consumer countries undergoes further processing. Raw sugar is washed, precipitated, decolorized with charcoal, then vacuum evaporated and centrifuged into refined white sugar or cubes. And today, white sugar dominates markets, with some sold as brown sugar, unrefined raw sugar. Varieties of sugarcane and refining techniques cause differences in impurities within raw sugar. That's why different brown sugars vary in flavor. However, not all brown sugar in supermarkets is unrefined. Some is white sugar mixed with molasses or caramel, meaning coloring white sugar makes brown sugar with only surface-level color. A light rinse washes it off, revealing white sucrose crystals underneath. So, is there a nutritional difference between raw, refined white, and dyed brown sugar? Yudkin's team ran a 2-year experiment feeding 4 rat groups: raw sugar, refined white sugar, dyed brown sugar, and sugar-free control. Results showed no significant differences in growth, offspring count, or metabolism among the groups. But their offspring differed clearly. Raw sugar group had high survival, then control, refined and dyed groups showed similar low survival. Compared to control and raw groups, refined and dyed groups' offspring developed ailments like abdominal swelling and hind limb weakness. Yudkin concluded both refined and dyed sugars negatively impact health. Raw sugar has higher nutritional value. Sugarcane variety and processing affect this darker brown raw sugar is superior. Yudkin advised choosing premium raw sugar if consuming sugar. In China, look for brown sugar meeting GB/T35885-2018 standard. Alternative sweeteners exist to satisfy sugar cravings. This stems from advances in chemical synthesis. Sweeteners mainly fall into two types. One provides sweetness plus sugar's texture or flavor-enhancing functions. For example, xylitol in gum offers mild cooling. It provides energy with sweetness while being tooth-friendly. The other provides only sweetness without sugar's functions, like saccharin aspartame for coffee or low-calorie drinks. Note: sugar creates happiness. Why did Yudkin believe such sweet sugar is deadly? Now let's explore part 2. How sugar destroys our health. Modern processed foods enhance flavor and appearance with added sugar, satisfying our appetites with variety.
But human sugar consumption has skyrocketed.
In 1850, global sugar production was about 1.5 million tons. By early 20th century, it exceeded 11 million tons. By 2020, it reached 166.18 million tons, a 15-fold increase in 120 years. UK annual sugar intake per person surged from approximately 2 kilograms in the 19th century to 45.3 kilograms today, over 20 times more, meaning sugar consumed yearly by Britons 200 years ago now lasts just 2 weeks. This includes not just visible sugar, but hidden sugar in processed foods.
Without regulations, market foods increasingly contain invisible sugar.
Don't believe me? Check food labels. Excessive sugar disrupts dietary balance, and our bodies haven't evolved to handle this burden, causing two health impacts. First, extra sugar increases total calories, causing obesity. Second, sugar calories displace other foods, raising malnutrition risks. These effects combine to destroy health. Yudkin's UK survey illustrates this perfectly. Rising sugar intake increased UK middle-class obesity rates, making weight loss consulting a booming industry. From 1950 to 1973, Britain's wealthiest saw dairy, meat, egg consumption drop 30% and fish nearly 50%. Nutritious foods were replaced by low-nutrient sugary ones, especially in affluent families choosing processed foods, leading to deficiency diseases. Excessive sugar intake disrupts our dietary balance and severely threatens our health. Meanwhile, growing research shows sugar causes diseases like heart disease, diabetes, tooth decay, and gout. Coronary heart disease is common, what we call CHD. In developed countries like US or Europe, CHD causes nearly 20% of total deaths. Earlier, we saw Ansel Keys, funded by sugar interests, pinned fats as heart disease villain through his lipid hypothesis. But Yudkin proposed the opposite sugar hypothesis. Sugar not fat triggers CHD. To test this, Yudkin's team conducted thorough research. First, they expanded Keys' 7-country study globally, finding fat CHD correlation too weak to support lipid hypothesis. French data showed rising fat intake didn't increase heart disease. UK-South Africa data revealed stronger sugar CHD links. Second, Yudkin designed experiments testing sugar CHD role. CHD relates to lipid levels and hormones. Yudkin tested both angles. First, lipid levels. Yudkin tested rats, chickens, pigs, and rabbits, tracking lipids and fat-regulating enzymes. Results: sugar increased triglycerides, cholesterol, and fat-synthesizing enzymes. Human trials confirmed sugar alters human lipids too.
Subjects also developed high blood pressure and glucose intolerance, CHD risk factors.
On the other hand, changes in sugar intake caused disordered fluctuations in insulin and adrenal cortical hormone levels in test animals. Subsequent human trials found excessive sugar triggers a cascade of hormonal imbalances. Combined factors increase platelet stickiness, promoting aggregation that forms atherosclerosis and leads to heart disease. Dr. Sheldon Reiser from USDA's Nutrition Lab later confirmed sugar's impact on hormones and its CHD connection.
Data shows average American sugar intake already causes these destructive health effects.
Yudkin rigorously validated the sugar hypothesis scientifically. Sugar elevates blood lipids and disrupts hormones, making it a primary CHD factor. But sugar's dangers extend further. Recent studies show excess dietary sugar thickens glomerular capillaries and cell membranes in kidneys, potentially triggering diabetes. High sugar diet tests increase gastric acidity, causing hiatal hernia and peptic ulcers. High sugar diets also induce gallstones, retinal damage, tooth decay, liver fibrosis, impairment, gout, and more. Additionally, sugar impedes growth in youth and reduces dietary protein utilization. Systemic perspective to many underlying diseases through hormonal disruption. Deadly sugar continually erodes our health. So how can we break free? Now let's discuss part 3, reasonable sugar intake control. In this book, Yudkin urges public awareness about sugar's threat and rational distinction between I want and I need, learning to resist taste-driven urges rather than endlessly indulging sweet cravings. Governments and societies must create frameworks guiding healthy diets that balance taste and nutrition. Today, nutrition science and consumers take Yudkin's views seriously, with more international bodies recognizing sugar's threat. In 2015, WHO issued sugar intake guidelines recommending less than 25 grams daily for normal weight adults. In 2016, China's dietary guidelines recommended limiting daily sugar intake to 50 grams, ideally under 25 grams. What does this mean? It's roughly equivalent to 2/3 of a classic Coke can, half a cup of bubble tea, or 60 grams of ice cream. Many healthy foods pack sugar too. A fruit yogurt contains approximately 10 grams. 30 grams of sugary cereal has approximately 9 grams. Fruit-added versions have even more. And this excludes alternative sweeteners mentioned earlier. Check nutrition labels to gauge if your intake is excessive. Clearly, many are sugar addicted. Cutting intake to recommended levels isn't easy. So how can we reduce sugar in daily diets? Yudkin offers 4 tips. First, firm determination, meaning we need strong motivation to commit to reducing or quitting sugar. We must recognize high sugar foods steadily destroy our health. We must restore dietary balance and health. Though sugar is addictive, commitment makes reduction feel achievable. Motivation might be your expanding waistline or toothache, not just diseases. Avoid locking the barn after the horse is stolen. Don't wait for heart disease or diabetes to act. Second, gradual progression. Reducing sugar doesn't mean instantly cutting to healthy levels. Take it slow. Let your body and taste buds adapt. If you add 2 sugars to coffee or tea, reduce to half over 1 to 2 weeks until needing none. Avoid high sugar sodas or bubble tea. If cold drinks tempt you, choose low or no sugar options. Third, rediscover food's natural flavors. Once accustomed to low or no sugar foods, you'll rediscover unique flavors masked by sweetness. Restore taste sensitivity helps you detect subtle differences between apple varieties. A delightfully nuanced pleasure. Fourth, reasonable sugar reduction doesn't mean fearing sugar or saying no to parties and ice cream. It won't isolate you socially. Even if you occasionally indulge in fancy desserts at a banquet, by cutting sugar and carbs elsewhere, you can maintain reasonable intake and a healthy diet. And the book concludes by warning of sugar's harm to child development. Choose lactose-based infant formula over sucrose. Limit sweets and biscuits to boost protein utilization, aid growth, and protect teeth. Yudkin, sugar resistance pioneer, spent his life debunking the lipid hypothesis, century-long lie.
Compared to fat, sugar is humanity's top health threat. He urged focusing more on sugar reduction alongside low-fat diets.
Later large-scale studies confirmed sugar's threat, and Yudkin's views gradually gained acceptance. While acknowledging sugar's dangers, we don't deny fat's harm either. After Yudkin's 1910 death in London, American nutritionist Robert Lustig carried his torch, spreading health truths, influencing generations, and exposing diet manipulation by consumerism. The truth has us trapped in sugar's whirlpool. After today's discussion, do you have a sugar reduction plan? Share your thoughts in the comments. Only a healthy, balanced diet safeguards us from disease and suffering. This concludes our reading of Sweet and Deadly. Find reading notes below the audio. See you next time.